what is the most important components or parts of this academic thesis or dissertation.
Yeah, so we've got a little infographic here to get us started. And we're going to talk about this in sort of more detail and a little bit more excruciating detail. But broadly speaking, and again, this is very helpful if you are beginning your master's or your PhD journey. So often what happens is that we as scholars, we kind of assume everybody knows what a thesis or a dissertation is because it's been so long ago since we've completed our own that we forget that when you start, you have no idea what you're getting into. So when you start your master's and when you start your PhD, you've probably never read a dissertation or a thesis before. You have no idea what the component parts are. But again, often, your supervisor, your committee, your professors, we forget what it's like to not know those basic fundamental things. So that's what this is to do, is to give us that grounding so that as we begin a master's or a PhD level project, a thesis or a dissertation, we know the component parts that are going to appear in pretty much all of these theses and dissertations. Again, depending on your field, if you're a criminologist or a physicist or a historian or a religious studies scholar, the details of what makes up your research will be very different. So research that's done in field work that is quantitative in nature will be very different from qualitative research that's done perhaps through interviews and ethnographic studies, which is going to be very different from theoretical research, which is getting into sort of philosophical debates. So those technical details will be different, but structurally, regardless of the fields that you are producing doctoral or master's level work, you're going to have these component parts. So you'll need an introductory section, and in the introductory section, you're going to need topic, background, literature review, and methodology sections. And again, in the topic, you need to clearly state the broad field into which your research falls. So again, this is going to be a whole section where you're starting broad and moving in narrowly. So if your thesis or dissertation is looking at settlement patterns in a particular country, again, you may situate that within the broader field. So immigration studies, and then you're looking at immigration and settlement patterns between a particular set of years. And perhaps there's other socioeconomic or demographic information that all composes your topic. And so only you will know what the broad topic and broad field is, and then what your part of that broad field is going to be. How are you contributing to that broad field? But that broad field, you do need to state that very early on. I mean, a dissertation or a thesis in classical Latin Roman settlement is going to be very different than looking at the habitation patterns in contemporary sub-Saharan Africa. So even though both of those might be looking at settlement and migration, historically it's going to be very different. There'll be sort of different dynamics and probably different aspects of those fields at play. So you need to be very specific at the beginning and outlining your topic within the broader field. So again, the number one sort of bit of advice here in terms of the topic section of your thesis or your dissertation is to make sure that what you are communicating to your reader is that, hey, I know the field. My field is called criminology. Within criminology, there are these subfields. And within this subfield, here's my topic. And so you need to lay that out as clearly as possible in your topic section. The next aspect of your introductory section is the background, where you really want to provide some relevant context. Often this is going to be, what are the major debates in your field? Or what's the other research? Who else has said something? So that you can kind of give the lay of the land to your reader and kind of demonstrate that, hey, I have a right to be here. I know the field. I know what it looks like. I know what we're getting ourselves into. And then again, you're going to want to bleed from that general background section into the more specific literature review. And this is again where you're providing a survey of the research in your field. So this isn't just kind of a list being like, hey, I did my reading, look at this list. This is where you shape your analysis of the research in your field as it relates to your own study. And similarly, then as you move on into the methodology section, this is again where you situate how you do what you do. So I've already given lots of examples. There can be case studies, there can be ethnography, there can be close reading analysis, there can be interviews, there can be data collection, there can be lab work, so there's all kinds of approaches to producing scholarship. And what you need to do in the methodology section is explain what your approach is to produce scholarship. So that is your introductory section. And by introductory section, that's not just one paragraph. That's probably an entire chapter. If it's only a master's level thesis, it might be a little bit more condensed because the expectations of the breadth of the scholarship will be a little bit reduced. But again, that entire introductory section, if it's a dissertation, it'll probably be a chapter. If it's a master's thesis, it's going to be like a big section unto itself with topic, background, literature review, and methodology. Then you get to the kind of most important part of your thesis or dissertation, and this is the body section, where you're going to have to provide your problem statement. And your problem statement is, okay, this is the thing that I want to figure out. This is the question that I'm going to explore. This is the thesis I'm going to advance. This is whatever it is that animates your research. That's your problem statement. I've discovered an anomaly in this scientific data set. I've discovered a gap in the scholarly literature. I've discovered an actual new artifact through my archaeological dig. Whatever it is that is going to be the real core of your thesis or dissertation, that's your problem statement. And then the analysis component is how you go about analyzing that particular data. And that, I haven't kind of broken down that section because that's where it now will be very different from discipline to discipline. So the analysis of quantitative data in a hard science will be very different from qualitative data in a social science, which will be very different from a theoretical analysis of texts in a humanities field. So that's why analysis is just kind of one word there, because that will be the most specific to what you and your supervisor and your committee are working on. But again, every kind of thesis or dissertation is going to have that problem statement and then the analysis component. And that's where it ends up being kind of very specific to your field. And then, of course, you have that concluding section, which ties everything together and also identifies gaps that you weren't able to explore, avenues for further study. So the concluding section is where you go, oh my gosh, so that was my problem statement. And this is how I've, analyzed that problem statement and brought this research to bear. Here are the things that were out of scope. Either it is interesting lines of research which couldn't fit into this dissertation or thesis. And here are some things that I might pursue in future to extend this. So again, a lot of talking, but you've got the visuals here to say a thesis and a dissertation. It needs your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. The introduction, topic, background, literature review, methodology. Your body section is your problem statement, and then the analysis of the data.